I've entitled my comments this afternoon, "An Old Face of War Talks Softly to the Choir." By what right do I take this opportunity to address you? Here is my hard-earned, non-academic pedigree. I enlisted in the Marine Corps at 17. I was a combat veteran of the American War in Vietnam by the age of 18. By age 19, I had survived combat and was now the orderly to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Nixon appointee Admiral Thomas Moore. At 20, I had been kicked out of the Pentagon as a security risk, joined Vietnam Veterans Against the War, and returned my military medals on the west steps of the U.S. Congress during Dewey Canyon 3. I was still on active duty. I was soon discharged as a conscientious objector. Between then and now, I feel I have suffered continually from post-traumatic stress for many decades, unbeknownst to me. Now I am a poet who only writes anti-war poems. This poem is entitled "Lifer in the War Against War." I was a Marine Corps volunteer at young age 17, a child soldier from America. An excellent garrison Marine, combat left me wretched. I could never sandbag away the harshness of the killing life. God and country morphed in my gut to cheap and sordid. I was growing gruesome hands and a killing heart. I was losing pride in simple, dirty hardship. Fading was my parade ground joy at bodies in harmonic motion. Totally gone was my sightless naivete of what I had been mythed to do. Be an automaton of death, hardened, skin-clad inhumanity, born in the jaded jungle war zone of kids killing kids. Discharged at 20, tumorous spirits, red livid with ugly anger, I wandered, hypered and hurting, mind frayed, emotions deformed, grieving life barren and crushingly suborned by what I couldn't name. A man-made malady no one wanted to hear. Long years passed. I walked dirt roads. I haunted dark bars. I married and married and married again. Then I epiphanied. I gained the goal of long ago. I became a lifer, not in sharp Marine dress blues, not bloodied, torn jungle camouflage. I became a lifer, long-haired, long-bearded, in the never-ceasing war against American war. I have no advanced degree, although I am ABD on a PhD in education. I am married to an academician, my third marriage, is to a Sanskritist, in fact. I work in academe at a low and very perfunctory level. And I will digress here and say I am in the process of filing a hostile work environment petition against Indiana University. What I ask myself is, what can I collegially share with you, historians against war? Quite a bit, actually, if you can listen well enough to hear me. There are 5 things I want to say, all of them commonsensical and not needing any amplification. Number 1, if you are a historian who is truly against the war, you cannot be dispassionate. Number 2, if you are against war, you must speak out loudly every day. Number 3, if you are against war, you must challenge everyone around you. Number 4, if you are against war, you must be willing to see this society change itself at its deepest and most abiding level. Such change begins with words spoken out loud and action enacted in public. Number 5, If you are against war, you must be brave, you must be courageous, you must be willing to jeopardize your career. In 1982, some 40 years after he experienced combat in World War II, Paul Fussell wrote, quote, "My war is virtually synonymous with my life. I entered the war when I was 19, and I have been in it ever since," close quote. In 2012, before I read Fussell's quote, and 43 years after I fought in the American war in Vietnam, I wrote, quote, "My American war was long ago. Moloch's dark embers flame daily inside my gray-haired head," close quote. My poetry is about war and ending war. It is poetry for my wounded spirit in the hope that I eventually become fully human again. Here is the poem I want to write love poems. I want to write love poems from the autopsy reports of the inbound Dover dead, to use hard, cold aluminum words and scar into the stupid minds of the living the vomitous stink and sludge of war-violated bodies. I want to write love poems to the godly, kind, loving neighbors who shook the now dead's hands, telling him, telling her of their hometown pride, thanking each for their iron belief in fighting for freedom when freedom was never at risk. I want to scratch love poems on the rag-draped caskets to each sobbing mom and dad, to each bored, mediocre teacher, to each blind pastor and priest, imam and parishioner of church, temple, synagogue, and mosque who will attend the fat rituals of bleak, industrialized war death. I want to write love poems tattooing our brazen deceit on these aluminum boxes of the commercialized dead. Lives snuffed out by our diapered refusals to say no. I had much of my humanity trained out of me in boot camp. I write about it in a poem entitled Desensitization, using A. Ginsberg's American Sentence. Ginsberg basically took the 17 symbols of haiku, which is 7, 5, and 7, and put them into a single line of 17 syllables. And I apologize in advance for its language. I'm not going to read the whole thing, as it seems distinctly out of place in a professional conference. But the first line says this: "You goddamn asshole, you motherfucking cunt, who the fuck are you, turd?" The poem ends with the word kill, repeated a nauseating 153 times. Atrocities are as much a part of war as are bombs, bullets, and dead bodies. Nick Turse, whom you have heard or will hear tonight, documents with U.S. military records from the National Archives that My Lai-type massacres happen every day in Vietnam, both early in the war and later, when the American war was falling apart. Dale Maharidge documents that Marines on Okinawa during World War II cut off Japanese ears, one of the accusations and one of the truths of Vietnam, and pried out gold-filled Japanese teeth and killed civilians. And of course, Fussell in Europe could have been charged with war crimes. In his book, Doing Battle, The Making of a Skeptic, on page 124, he writes, quote, "In a deep crater in a forest, someone in my company had come upon a squad or two of Germans, perhaps 15 or 20 in all. Their visible wish was to surrender. Most were in tears of terror and despair. Their visible wish to surrender was ignored by our men lining the rim. Whatever the reason," and here he has all this is capitalized, "the great turkey shoot resulted. Laughing and howling, hoo-hawing and cowboy and good old boy yelling, our men exultantly shot into the crater until every single man down there was dead. A few tried to scale the sides, but there was no escape. If a body twitched or moved at all, it was shot again. The result was deep satisfaction, and the event was transformed into amusing narrative told and retold over campfires all that winter. Atrocities consisting of murder, rape, brutality, usually against non-combatants, are frequent occurrences during every war. Not only in Fusil's Great Turkey Shoot, Vietnam's My Lai, Desert Storm's Highway of Death, but there was the Morro Crater Massacre, the Philippine-American War. Certainly Wounded Knee would fall into that category. In fact, under, quote, list of events named massacre in Wikipedia, prints out 74 pages. My poems are not written to be autobiography or memoir. I began writing my inner life as poems in a very conscious attempt to heal myself of my hatred and frustration and anger. And as an agent of healing, they have succeeded very well. Yet my goal of ending war requires they refresh daily my burning hatred and frustration and anger of everything related to war. My poems have now morphed to hard politics. I don't write about red roses and pretty sunsets. This is a poem called "The Unvarnished Truth is All the Puzzle I Want." Don't write me of red, pretty sunsets, unless you are roaring, "The Rubicon hue in the sky is the earth hemorrhaging and you are cheering it along." Don't write me of red, pretty sunsets. Write me whirling mad poems on a dead kid's blood-dry bandage. Write me snarling, blasphemous words on paper stained with human shit. Write me bloody rhymes, word splinters driven hard under manicured nails. Don't write me of pretty red sunsets, unless you're drunk, enraged, red-livid, and frothing mad at our ubiquitous, toxic ignorance. How did I get here? I want you to know. Spring 1968, Quezon, Rowan and Martin was laughing, the USS Pueblo, the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, and of course the Tet Offensive in 1968. Sacramento, California, I'm a 17-year-old, a senior in high school, a white kid who grew up in a blue-collared, conservative Christian America. I enlist, going on active duty 2 weeks after high school graduation. U.S. Marine Corps Semper Fi, a man by instant American mythology. January to July 1969, I arrive in country Vietnam, January 9th, and get assigned to Bravo Company, 1st Battalion, 9th Marine Regiment, 3rd Marine Division in I Corps. Just below the DMZ. Our nickname was the Walking Dead. My military occupational specialty was being an M60 machine gunner. My first operation was Dewey Canyon, a sweep through the Ashaw Valley where the Ho Chi Minh Trail comes into Vietnam from Laos. 6 weeks of constant dread, fear, death, and jungle. Leeches, clothes rot, we go without food, we carry our dead, jungle rot eats to the bone on both of my shins. Months of bad combat remain. Late July 1969, I get tremendously lucky. I remain with Bravo 19 when Nixon pulls out the first 25,000 troops from Vietnam. You had to be more than halfway through your 13-month tour, and I had just crossed off month number 7. I was getting out of the bush, out of the country. July 69 to January 1970, we ship aboard a Navy troop ship. Oh my God, fresh water and daily showers. And landed at Okinawa, training as a ready reaction force. I came down with malaria in Manila. I listened through the wonderful glaze of a medically induced hallucinogenic stupor to the monkeys playing in the green palm courtyard, swaying to the soft South Pacific breeze. Sounds like a musical, doesn't it? I ship home after 13 months overseas and take a 30-day leave. February 1970 to fall 1970, I'm assigned to Marine Barracks, Marine Corps Headquarters, 8th and I, Washington, D.C. We do ceremonial duties at the White House, Blair House, weekly dress parades at 8th and I and the Iwo Jima Monument, in addition to security at Camp David, the presidential retreat. The district is thick with anger and anti-war sentiment. My Lai hits the news, Cali is arrested, the shootings at Kent State and Jackson State shocked me deeply. I think long and hard about deserting to Canada. Fall 1970 to spring 1971, Nixon appoints a Navy Admiral Thomas Moore to be chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I am picked to become his orderly, walk his briefcase in and walk his briefcase out. I join Vietnam Veterans Against the War. I lose my top secret security clearance and get kicked out of the Pentagon as a security risk. Defense Intelligence also gave me a lie detector test, which is an amazing experience. Yeah. April 1971, VVAW stages its 3-day anti-war demonstration on the Mall, west of the U.S. Capitol. I participate in my second Dewey Canyon. It was called Dewey Canyon 3. I wear the jacket from my dress blues, a large embroidered cartoon character hand-stitched on the back. Still on active duty, I return my combat and military medals to the U.S. Congress. Nixon, hurt politically by the authenticity of VVAW, jerks away international press coverage by inflaming the MIA-KIA issue. I still, to this day, cannot see that black and white flag without my blood pressure rising in anger. May 1st, 1971, I am honorably discharged as a conscientious objector. I am 20 years old. I start college in the fall, studying religion at Anderson College in Anderson, Indiana, trying unsuccessfully to fit in. The scars show up much later. I had already seen too much reality. In my mid-50s, vicious post-trauma jerks my mind to look back, to embrace the trail of litter I have left behind. 3 marriages, 2 affairs, multitudinous jobs, distracted dreams, wasted meanings, 0 retirement. All of this muddled together with I can't read that word, with shards of anger, hopeless love, resentment, impatience, and misunderstood carnality, topped with a frosting of white-whipped Christianity. War taught me to feel fierce force everywhere, to hate authority. War conditioned me to breed hyper-vigilant states of anger, fear, distrust. I would look around my narrowed world and blearily see others less embattled than I set their unblemished sails of their lives for cashmere horizons and glistening goals. I look up and see my life sails pierced and ragged by bloodied bone chips, blasted fragments of life, grisly sprays of blood and brain and piss and shit and madness. Now in old age, I accept that I stand forever bathed in war's dirty light. My throat and thoughts forever knotted to a titanium lamppost designed by Homeland Security to withstand a direct hit by a terrorist dirty bomb. My 60s mates are gone, other than today, into releasing death or well-paid corporate life, sub silentio. Middle-class America has been pimped off by an all-volunteer military of the poor, the immigrant, the dumb, and of course, the politically blinkered. The brute elites, pretty and well-coiffed in their gray tailored suits, enter the banks laughing amongst themselves 24/7 over their latest mass market manipulation. My battles, they tell me when they deign speak, are non-existent, self-chosen, delusional. Life is good. To hell with all who can't make it. Yes, my words are caustic, inelegant, intentionally and painfully direct, steaming scat at a formal dinner party. I choose them to be. Other poets are graceful word swans, beautifully flicking forth flumes, diaphanous brocades of the finest in quotidian life. I'm duck ugly, gawky and ungainly at wordsmithing. I've thought of making my poems funny. Maybe I'll make everyone laugh, then surreptitiously slip in a seriously different way of being. Maybe I will use funny spoons clacking in rhythm. Maybe I will hire twin midges playing tiny twin trombones. Maybe I will lease the Marine Corps band to play Jimi Hendrix's Star Spangled Banner and have them at finale smash their instruments in one grand, glorious gesture of defiance. But none of that is me. I'm an angry American veteran, a voice writing madly what I know, seeking to excise love of country and human ideals from pompous patriotism and sanguinary selfishness. If the toxic words of my poems hurt you and I want them to pierce deeply, figure out why. But you need to know I ask of no man, no woman permission to carry this stake through my heart, traipsing across America's angry steps. I am trying with an intent for which I am truly willing to die, to scribe upon every American's heart, mind, eyes, and hands a true picture of how we cause so much pain and death worldwide. I know deeply I can, you can, we can stop war with nothing more than singular hard work to halt nationalist gore and the people who ignore their blind-eyed role in its perpetuation. I don't mourn the combat dead. I mourn the civilian living. Mine dead, fatted on force-fed lies. I mourn for the future of the living, those numbed to the unlearned lessons of the available past. I refuse to let my combat in the American war in Vietnam be the signal event of my life. Millions died and millions more were injured for lives. Generation after wounded generation, children, including my own sons, grew up in chaos and death, weary, lonely, soulful sadness because of our uncritical acts of ugly human idiocy. I willingly accept this debt I owe them, all of them, both Vietnamese and American. I vow to die for peace worldwide. That will be my repayment. We don't have peace because we don't want it. That simple? Yes, that's simple. If we wanted it truly and deeply, we would rise up and make it. Thank you.